Hello, welcome back to part 6 of the Deja Vu review. This one little thing keeps coming up. Why? Anyway, I was explaining to you how Lucifer thinks, okay? So, as we already know, Satan desires to be like the Most High. So he was explaining, I have a destiny and I have a purpose, and which is to be the Antichrist. And he's like, Satan's reasons like man, but God thinks of eternity. As we know, Satan wants to be a representation of God, which he can't be because he's like a roaring lion, but he's not one. But he lays prostrate before the world that is going to hell. So he believes that he's Jesus. Okay, so as we know, that's the way Satan is. He's the Antichrist. So because in all eternity I'm here and I will be remembered for that destiny. So this bomber is saying that a bomb has a destiny. All Satan ever wants to do is create destruction. So a bomb having its own destiny is a creation of destruction, right? So anyone who tries to alter destiny will be destroyed. Now I want to pause here. This is what this satanic individual is saying. But when it comes down to it, when you are doing this for God, meaning God's destiny, when it's for God's destiny, it works exactly the same. But see, Satan doesn't understand that anything he creates is not going to be able to be it's going to be able to be destroyed because it's not God's destiny. Anything outside of the will of God can be destroyed by God. But remember, he thinks that he's God because he's walking around in this false sense of his own delusion. So this is the way that this man is thinking. So if you try to stop it from happening, you end up causing it to happen. I want to say this in relation to your God-ordained marriages. Pay close attention. Anything, any satanic plot, any witchcraft, anything that was attempted to deter you from your God-ordained spouse, it says in the word that what God has put together, let no man put asunder. What God has put together, let no man put asunder. So if that's the case, anything that comes against you and your God-ordained spouse's marriage is unknowingly pushing you two together. I literally saw a video by Trust and Obey and Imagine Ministries that said that what they attempted to do was tear you apart, but they unknowingly pushed you together. Stephanie P talks about this as well a lot. So, it ended up causing it to happen. What you don't understand is we are not here to coexist. Children of God are not here to coexist. But the devil thinks, I don't know, in his delusion that he can get back to where he was, which he can't. So I'm not understanding what his thought process is. But hey, he thinks what he thinks. So he's not going to be able to get back to heaven because God didn't allow him. No, he can just wander back and forth. But he never going to be able to have a permanent place of rest there anymore. So he thinks, he's like, we don't coexist. I'm here to win. That was Satan's problem. He was thinking that he was in a competition with God, and he was not. And this is how he ended up being dropped back down to earth, because of the fact that he thought that he was there to win something. I gotta beat you. There is no competition with God. I was listening to a minister a couple weeks ago, and she said that everybody has these images where they show God or Jesus and the devil, but the devil is not even on Jesus's level, not to mention he ain't the same size. The creation is nowhere near the size of the Creator. So, it's like, so you better have divine intervention because you're going to need it. So he's saying that you better have divine intervention. God is the divine intervention, and he set forth his children across the world in order to do what he needs to be done. But see, these are things that your God ordained spouse is just coming into the understanding of. And if I didn't say it already, we're on part, what did I say, 6? Okay. So the police have now got the evidence. They've caught the killer. The confession has been taped. They got the evidence in which they needed to support this entire situation. So they feel like the case is wrapped up. And Doug's saying, what do you mean that the case is wrapped up? It's like, we need to continue to, there's somebody standing there that works on the team. And he's like, we need to continue, though. We need to finish seeing what needs to be done. Your God ordained spouse does have prophetic witnesses that are divine helpers that are sent to assist him in making sure what he can get done is done, which means they will even overlook certain things that your God ordained spouse is doing that is against the authority of where he's at, because they know that he needs to do it in order to get to where God's trying to take him, okay? So he has prophetic witnesses that are assisting him and helping him. So they collected the evidence. Why do we need to take it any farther than that? And his boss is saying, we have protocols. There are strict protocols. These people are operating in the path of logic. More importantly, they're operating in the path of their logic because they're serving whoever it is that they serve. And when your God ordained spouse comes in talking about God's logic, they're like, what the heck you talking about? What you mean? What you mean? What do you mean you going over there? What you mean you doing that? That ain't how we operate over here. We have very strict protocols. And because they follow Satan, some of these individuals that he's being surrounded by follow Satan. They're like, we got strict protocols too. I was standing in the kitchen recently and I saw the name The Devil's Advocate. Remember that movie? The Devil's Advocate, Satan's children, they sit at the table with Satan, and they've been given strict instructions. And it's like, you messing up Satan's plans here. What are you talking about here? We over here following New Age, Antichrist, Baal. What are you talking about? We have strict protocols over here. What are you talking about? You going to go that way? So, he's like, well, it's like, sir, by one theory, it's already happened. He said, Doug's like, what about Claire? Your God ordained spouse's concern is you. That's what his concern is. And they're like, what about her? She was killed 4 days ago. He's like, she's going to die in 12 hours. Your God ordained spouse no longer can see the differentiation between the natural and the spirit realm. He's fighting with false evidence being real. Remember, we just went over the number sequences, and which one is it that I said? Was it 504? No, 504 is water. I think it was 5013 that talks about he's wrestling. Your God ordained spouse is wrestling with the reality of where he is and the spirit realm. So he's wrestling with these two things. He no longer can see the differentiation. And Doug's like, I can't accept that, sir. So, I just said that the guy that was trying to help him said, I can extend the report, but we had to tell him something. And he was like, yeah, I understand. But he's like, what do I tell her father, though? Your God ordained spouse is more concerned with the relationship between you and the Father. His relationship between you and his relationship with the Father as well. He's going to protect you. And I was brought another revelation yesterday when I was thinking about this, that when the Father handed him the photographs, God gave him a picture of what you looked like. God gave him a picture of who you were. He gave him two understandings. His understanding of who you are in the natural and his understanding of who you are in the spirit. And he's been battling that because he had to walk through his journey of finding himself in his walk with God and in the spirit. You understand what I'm saying? So he ends up leaving and going back to her apartment to check out the place. The place is demolished. It's a wreck. He sees photographs here and he picks up some pictures. And then he looks again and he sees the refrigerator door. And he picks up the phone and calls Danny. Danny's the guy that worked at the office that was helping them. And the guy that was the witness, I call him a prophetic witness, he was standing there packing up. And Danny's on the phone with him and he's saying, we both know what happens if you try this. He said, I can't say I didn't expect this call, but you know what happens if you try this. And he says, we both know what happens if we don't. And Danny giggles. And he said, I've never had a willing guinea pig volunteer for science. He said, well, we have to make sure I end up somewhere besides in the morgue so that I can help. So can you help me? Danny says, I'll see you when you get here. The guy that was the witness that was standing there when his boss chewed him out, he said, just turn the lights off when y'all leave, please. So Danny's there and he's helping him get ready. So as he's helping him get ready to go into the machine, it was just 12:12 on this recording. Dominion and authority. So he's helping him when he arrives, and he's getting ready to put his gun on, and he said, you need it as low mass as possible because we don't know what's going to affect the machine. He's like, okay. He said, I need you to take off everything except your underwear. And he was like, okay. And I'm reminded of a scripture. Hold on, let me see if I can get it. I can't find the specific scripture I'm looking for. It talks about when the people are preparing to leave. I don't believe it was an Exodus when they left, but they were telling them not to take anything with them. Don't take a bag, don't take clothes, don't take nothing. That's like the situation this man is in. He can't take nothing to cross over into this realm that he's going into in order to save her. Your God-ordained spouse has to go completely in the trust of God, and he can't take none of his past ways, thoughts, and or processes with him when he comes into contact with where God's taking him through his journey to meet you, okay? So, and this was interesting. This is the actual conversation that happened in the film. Catch this. So he says, I thought you didn't believe in God, to Danny, the guy that's helping him. Danny said, I do. I just didn't tell anybody. There are people that have been associated with your God-ordained spouse that have been amongst the people that have been trying to hem your God-ordained spouse in. They look just like the ones that are trying to hem your spouse in. But in actuality, they running with that crowd, but they are not of that crowd. These people are assisting and are witnesses to your God-ordained spouse in that season to keep him on track. They ain't yelling and praising, and they ain't saying that they are followers of God, but they are there. And they're giving him the witness information necessary in order to lead him in the right direction. So Danny is saying, I do believe in God. I just didn't tell nobody. And Doug says, I'm going to tell everybody. Your God ordained spouse, when he gets through this situation, he's like, oh, I now know God is God. I understand your God is God. And I'm going to tell everybody. Just like the Samaritan woman that became a witness after Jesus and the well moment. Remember when I did that word, is a word I did where I talked about your God ordained spouse was the woman at the well. Except he was the man at the well because he had 6 mistresses and none of them was his wife. In this situation, with this scenario that he's had to walk through to get to you and get to the crossing of where he needs to be, when he gets out of this, he's already declared, I'm telling everybody about God now. Or I'm going to tell everybody about God now. That's a done deal. And the guy says, if this works, there may come a point that you may get a call in a couple of days telling you to come down to the morgue because we got somebody we need you to identify. And he's like, it might be your body. There's parts of your God ordained spouse that need to die, okay? And they're going to end up dead in the morgue when he crosses over to where he's going, okay? This is his day 3. Oh, I just noticed that. He had to die in order to cross over. Oh my God, I just figured that out. When he goes through the machine, he had to die in order for him to be resurrected. Remember the road to Damascus, the 3rd day. Remember, Jesus was risen on the 3rd day. He's going in, and when he goes into the machine, the guy's telling him, Doug's telling him, yeah, but I think I would have remembered if that had happened. But I remember, side note, remember in the beginning of the movie when I was telling you that he went to his office and his assistant came in the door and he said something about a body. The woman came in and said there's a body that was identified and they need you to come do something. And he said, nah, that's all right. Just say that it's something in relation to the body. Meaning they wanted a profile of all of the bodies, just like they want profiles of the bodies, blah, blah, blah. He said, no, don't worry about it. Just stick it in with the rest of the other things. I think that body was his body. It wasn't hers because they hadn't found her body yet. I think that was his body. But he didn't go check. The guy tells him to face out when getting in the machine. He's positioned. Your God ordained spouse had to get in a very specific position in order to enter where God was taking him. And he had to be stripped of everything. Didn't I just say in one of the numbers in the interlude, if you watch that video, I said in the interlude there was one number that means to be stripped. He had to be stripped of everything in order to be positioned, in order to walk into what it was that he was called to walk into. You understand what I'm saying? So, Danny tells him, you don't have to do this. And he says, but what if I already have? So he locks him in and he said, you're going to be arriving in New Orleans on Fat Tuesday at 10:50. Let's see what 10:50 means. Now, you know this number was relevant, right? He's supposed to arrive at 10 o'clock the next morning, right? Or that the bomb is at 10 o'clock the next morning, right? 10:50 means a place or a street, which is a location, is it not? It's an exact location. He arrives. Mark 10:50 means this. Mark 10:50, and he cast away his garments. Didn't he have to take his clothes off before he got in that machine? His upper garments, in which he had to take off all of his upper garments. He was allowed to keep his underwear and all that kind of stuff on, underwear, socks, and stuff. which no doubt was little worth, meaning the garments in which you wear or what you have is of little worth. Through this, he did. Your God ordained spouse cast off of the old garments. And then he might make a quicker dispatch. This ain't nothing but God. So, quicker dispatch to Christ. In order to make a quicker entrance into where he's supposed to be going, he had to remove the old garments. Rose from off the bank or the ground where he sat in an instant and sprung up. Your God ordained spouse is springing up. He's moving towards you, but he had to rise. He had to come to a place of rising from where he was. So he had to get up and start moving towards where he needed to go, but he had to strip off of all of these things. So let me read the scripture again in context. Mark 10:50. And he cast away his garments, his upper garments, in which no doubt was little worth, though this he did, that he might make a quicker dispatch to Christ, rose from off the bank or the ground where he sat in an instant and sprung up. That's only God, because that was perfectly placed in there. Right when he did that. Come on now. So, let me get to this next part. The guy says, "Oh, I'll see you yesterday." He ends up arriving in the ER. They're in the middle of a surgery. Good thing he arrived when they were in the surgical room, because if he had arrived at any other point in time, it'd have been a mess. So the power went out, and they're in the middle of this surgery. It's like, oh, the generator's kicking back in. When the generator kicks back in, they see him on a table having a seizure. They're like, oh, let's go help him. So half of the nurses run over to help him who's laying on the table. They give him oxygen. They do all of this. Your spouse has now been resurrected on the other side of this situation. He wakes up in the hospital, and he's coherent enough. He sees the newscast saying that it's early in the morning. I think it's 7 a.m. on Fat Tuesday. Remember Mardi Gras Tuesday, and he only got a few hours to get himself together and get to where he needs to go. So he has now been resurrected. And he puts on the clothes of the man that was there. I'm being reminded of the scene. Remember when Jesus was resurrected and he looked like a different man? That even, was it Mary Magdalene? I believe it was Mary Magdalene or Mary that didn't recognize him. It was somebody that didn't recognize him because he looked like one of the keepers for the tomb when he was going down the road, but he was Jesus. He had to put on a different garment. Your God ordained spouse is going to be unrecognizable to the very people that he's been associating with. The disciples didn't recognize him. The people didn't recognize him because he was not wearing the same clothes. He was not wearing his same body. Your God ordained spouse is coming up from the resurrection changed and transformed on the third day. And at this point, he needs to hasten. So I've been seeing hasten, come quickly,